Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon. I'm Sean Tyson of the United States Department of Energy, the Office of Nuclear Energy. I'm the U.S. co-chair for the Reliable Nuclear Fuel Services Working Group, and I would like to welcome you on behalf of the steering group chair, Alicia Duncan. She appreciates the contributions of everyone who put together this webinar, and she would also like to thank those of you who are joining at various times of the day and evening to present on this important topic. She looks forward to seeing this presentation afterwards and hearing both the questions and the responses from the group. With that, I welcome everyone, and I look forward to this meeting.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, also in my name and in the name of the Reliable Nuclear Fuel Service Working Group. My name is Tomáš Žagar. I'm the president of Nuclear Society of Slovenia, a head of services and development at Gen Energija in Slovenia, and the Slovenian co-chair of this working group now for many years. This webinar will reflect a shift in recent focus for our working group. In the past, we focused on spent fuel disposal, especially on multinational repository concepts, but now we will address the broader activities that are associated with the management of the back end of the nuclear fuel cycle, including the steps before, which are before high-level disposal, such as storage and recycling. Some forms of spent fuel storage are necessary part of all nuclear energy programs where safety and security of the spent fuel must be maintained. With this webinar, the working group will now begin exploring through the corporate exchange of information the issues associated with storage. Of course, such activities should be of interest of all IFNEC members. In addition to long-term storage, nuclear energy generators have an interest in developing technologies directed at recycling and reuse of spent fuel. These technologies, referred to as advanced fuel cycles, are currently being actively developed with commercial applications possible in the foreseeable future. The working group with this webinar will begin exploring this important topic too. Today, we will begin this webinar with a presentation by IAEA, the organization that is the lead for research and understanding the issues associated with storage as an important part of spent fuel management. This will be followed by NIA presentation providing an overview of the development of advanced fuel cycles. We will then hear a policy view from Germany on their unique perspective on spent fuel management. Two of the countries that are very active in the development of advanced fuel cycle technology, Russia and China, will then discuss their ongoing work and hopefully provide some information on when they expect these technologies will become available. We will end our webinar with a presentation on the current status of the first geologic repository for spent fuel disposal to enter operation by Posiva in Finland. Following the last presentation, I will moderate a discussion session with a full panel with the hope of exploring some of the interesting issues that may have come up in the presentation, and especially to explore the interconnections between those different phases of the spent fuel management. You will note on your screen the button that allows you to submit questions. We look forward to receiving your written questions. Questions will be addressed by the panel following the webinar, and written responses will be included as part of the report produced from this webinar and published on the IFNEC website. As one of many examples of the participation by working group members in our activities, we are most fortunate to have the Rosatom Technical Academy as a co-sponsor of the webinar. And in that regard, I will ask Vladimir Artišuk to say a few words.
Thank you, Thomas. Is it clear? So thank you again, Thomas. Thank you, everybody. It's my honor and pleasure to be with you today. And by the way, we have a very good autumn afternoon in Moscow. Excellent day, beautiful day. And it's my pleasure, of course, to share this feeling of fresh autumn from Moscow. I joined IFNEC in 2018. And since that, I have been supporting the efforts of this organization, this platform, in promoting nuclear power globally. We found that this international platform brings together 34 member states and 31 observer countries, and including very respectable organizations like International Atomic Energy Agency, OECD, and IAEA Generation 4 International Forum. If you have a chance to look at the IFNEC website, you can see what kinds of topic IFNEC put at the table this year. The financing scheme of small modular reactors, contractual structure and incentive in nuclear new build, taxonomies, environment, social governance criteria, and today we have a topic on the future of spent fuel management. Even quick glance at the topics of the IFNEC positioning gives you an idea that IFNEC is focusing the topics which on the one hand are rather challenging, and on the other hand, this provides business opportunities for people and for organizations. It is this niche of IFNEC that makes this platform to be complementary to other nuclear international platforms and organizations. That is why in Russia we pay very careful attention to the IFNEC activities and do our best to make IFNEC more visible in the Russian Federation. This particular event, the Future of Spent Fuel Management, is organized in cooperation with Rosatom Technical Academy, which has a status, by the way, to be a collaboration center with International Atomic Energy Agency. And I hopefully think that it will acquire similar status with IFNEC as a collaborating center. Why not? So Rosatom Technical Academy last year served as a hub in translating the IFNEC webinar series on small modular reactor to Russian stakeholders. Today with the Academy, we made one more step. With this, I wish you to see and to use this time as effective as possible within coming hours. I mean, I wish you to receive a new knowledge, have a highly interesting discussion, and establish a new paradigm for global cooperation. Of course, in this format, in pandemic, if you bring, pandemic, by the way, can bring us together if we are wise enough not let us to drive apart. And I call on you to be a part of that endeavor and use the IFNEC mechanism to support global sustainable development through promoting nuclear power in this world. So I hand it over again to you, Tom. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Vladimir, for these opening remarks. Also, thank you, Sean, for the opening remarks on your behalf and the behalf of the IFNEC chair. And I believe we can start with the content of the webinar. And I have a pleasure to introduce our first speaker with slides. And our first speaker will come from the International Atomic Energy Agency. This is Mr. Christophe Xerri, Director of Fuel Cycle and Waste Technology Division. Mr. Christophe Xerri will speak about enabling flexibility in spent fuel management towards advanced fuel cycles. While operational experience of more than 60 years for wet solution and more than 40 years for dry solutions has demonstrated the safety of spent fuel storage for long periods, extended spent fuel storage could be considered as an opportunity to develop new technologies and move towards advanced fuel cycle strategies. The presentation given by Christophe will provide a perspective on advanced fuel cycles and introduce ongoing IAEA work and the results of research performed on the feasibility of long-term storage in this respect. Christophe, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Tomasz, for this nice introduction. And good day, bonjour to all of you. And one of the things, two things that I want to emphasize in the presentation I will make. One is the concept of flexibility. And the second one is the fact that we have already a lot of experience in spent fuel storage. Next slide, please. So very quick word on the International Atomic Energy Agency. I guess most of you joining this webinar are aware that the agency shall seek to accelerate and enlarge the contribution of atomic energy to peace, health, and prosperity throughout the world. I guess that's what we call Atoms for Peace and Development, that were being created in 1957. and that all three main activities are safeguards and verification for non-proliferation, getting a consensus on safety standards, and supporting the information sharing and dissemination in science and technology, which does include, of course, nuclear power and spent fuel management. Next slide, please. So where we are at the moment, one of the leading driver of the world today is the Sustainable Development Goals. And as part of that, energy production is very important to address decarbonization, but also to ensuring resilience and security of electricity supply. I think with a recent spike in the price of gas, it shows that nuclear energy has also a role to play in this aspect for the one who are deciding to using nuclear energy. And obviously, with more and more people on the planet, and everyone is aspiring legitimately to a better life or a good life, energy will increase, and it's important that we manage increase of energy without too much of carbon, and ensuring stable supply for all of them. And also to be put in the global picture is what we hear now from a lot of different places, which is called circular economy. You hear about it on plastics, you hear about it on clothes, you hear about it on food, even on tourism, which means that recycling is something which is getting again interest and attraction, and it which we need to also have in mind when we are talking about spent fuel management. Next. So how do we foresee nuclear power beyond 2050? I said beyond 2050 because before 2050, basically all of us knows already with what is already ongoing. If you take a kind of long-term view, current majority of reactors are based on design which were developed in the 80s, 90s, and which have been improved over time. So you got some examples, and with basically over time also an increase of time with currently a leading technology, which is a light water reactor, whether it's pressurized boiling or VVR. And there are also other technologies being implemented, like the Canadian condo reactors, for instance, but light water reactors are clearly dominating the scene with size started in the 400 to 600 in the 70s to now being close to 1,000 to up to 1,500. Future systems are coming, and what we see on the future system is, of course, still good contribution of the light water reactor technologies, including big reactors, that are here to stay. But in addition, we are see coming SMR, small and modular reactors, with a specific design, sometimes similar to light water reactor, but sometimes very different. We expect that with nuclear energy here to stay, recycling will become more widespread, which means that fast reactors will also have their role to play. We see new technology like or technology which were not completely new, but which will become more mainstream in the future, like high temperature gas-cooled reactors. And we see things which are even more innovative, like molten salt. So we see a progressive deployment of new technologies. I put around 250 for SMRs because you need the time to design them, license them, and build them. So demonstrators you may probably become before 2050, hopefully, maybe as early as 2030, but to really have them as a mainstream technology more around that time. So I'm putting that here to see that we are not in a static situation, and that technologies of reactors and prospect of recycling will evolve in the next 20, 30, 40 years. Next, please. Which means that because implementation of nuclear power program takes many decades, and here we were on the design, but once you've got it, your reactor will usually run for 60 to 80 years, maybe even more in the future. there is many pathways and there is many unknowns. So we'll not go into details, but just to give you a glimpse. Next slide, please. There are plenty of drivers for your backend options, and that could be the nuclear fuel cycle economy, that could be safety and security, that could be public acceptance, that could be non-proliferation, and all that are important to take into account, and all that may also evolve over the years. Some technology may come in terms of public acceptance, the drivers of public acceptance may change, and where today in some countries there are some reluctance, maybe in the same countries in 20 years there will be a strong support. So all that has to be taken into account because all that are drivers which change over time. And if you want to know more on that, you can refer to e-learning module on spent fuel management, where you will see this and much more information. Next one, please. So talking about many pathways, what we know today is a light water open fuel cycle, and I think Finland will give a very successful example of this approach. You have also the fuel closed cycle using recycling in a light water reactor, which has already many benefits, as you can see on the graph below open fuel cycle, which is also successfully implemented. And with the Gen 4 reactors, we could go to a fully closed cycle. And if you take a very long-term view, maybe at some point we will be able not to use any more uranium and to run mainly on recycling of current and future spent fuel. And all that with thinking of economic viabilities and safety, environmental friendly and waste burden minimization, proliferation resistance, and flexibility to adapt to any policy evolutions. So as you can see, the pathways are many, and it's very difficult today to know what will be the real situation in 10 years, 30, 40, 50 years time. Next one, please. Which means as well many unknowns. So on the storage itself and the technologies, location and duration, we started with 40, 50 years in mind. We are now close to 100, and it may be more. What the endpoint will be, direct disposal, recycling, which type of recycling, one recycling, multi-recycling, evolution of nuclear energy demand. Today we saw that growing, but growing moderately compared to the needs of the planet. Maybe there will be a strong acceleration because there will be no other options, or maybe there will be a big breakthrough in fusion, nuclear fusion, and yes, it will be a different way of thinking which will be used, and new technologies, which all that will result in impact on the spent nuclear fuel management in the future. So again, nobody knows, but it is important that these uncertainties, but also these opportunities are identified, recognized, and addressed. I'm talking about opportunities, just quoting a side discussion I had some years ago with a country which is currently storing its spent fuel, and was looking at several pathways for their future strategy. And one of them is, shall I take over the spent fuel of other countries? Because in 40 years' time, everybody will want spent nuclear fuel for fast reactors and will be very rich at that time. So it's also an opportunity. Next one, please. So in any case, storage is a key step of spent fuel management strategies. As you will see from Finland, between considering final disposal to have it implemented, it takes decades. Same with recycling. Some countries are basically recycling on kind of nearly just in time. But if you have not started to recycle, it will also take time. And if you are waiting for opportunities to do that, so the time you need to either have your spent fuel, your geological storage, or your industrial recycling facilities with the current economics of uranium, we are talking about decades. So whatever you think you will do, or whatever you want to do now, you will need spent nuclear fuel storage solutions. Next one, please. So that's where we look at duration. Clearly, long-term storage is not an alternative to recycling or disposal. It's an interim solution. And I put here the definition we find in the safety glossary. Storage is a temporary state by definition. spent fuel is held in a facility that provides for its containment with the intention of retrieval, whether it is for disposal or for recycling. But it does provide flexibility, new technologies, new recycling options, socio-political demands, which, as we said, could change in the future, public supports. Now, recognizing that storage duration is an opportunity or is something that you have to do with, there are some topics to be addressed. One is the spent fuel behavior integrity in the long-term storage. Another one is the aging and maintenance of the storage facilities themselves. And another one, as an example, is the spent fuel transportability after storage. Next one, please. So the agency has coordinated a lot of work on all these topics. Here you see a series of what we call coordinated research progress project on the behavior of spent fuel assemblies during storage. And we have consolidated the results got since 1981 in a new tech doc, which is being published. Next one, please. We have worked on spent fuel performance and cladding integrity. And as you can see, this work are very detailed, based on more than 60 years of storage experience in wet situation, which is mainly at reactors, but also sometimes at centralized facilities, and the more recent, but still more than 40 years experience in dry storage. And one of the topics which was looked here was the effect of hydrogen on zirconium cladding. Next one, please. There are plenty of solutions for dry storage technologies, and we are attempting at the moment to list them and give a good view for whether we need to go into that direction, whether it's transportable, non-transportable, and so on. I don't have the time to go into details here, but this is available or will be available very soon. Next one, please. So we are working also on this dry storage systems performance with a coordinated research project on demonstrating performance spent fuel we called demo, which is coming to the end. And we will have, next one, please, a new one coming. Yes, on aging management program for the dry storage systems, which also went to an end, and we are publishing a tech doc, technical documentation on it, and we are starting a new CRP on the spent fuel storage systems, which will be launched next year. Next one, please. And on spent fuel categorization, which is important, especially when we're talking about long lead time. And if you are not exactly sure of what you will do next, you need to have a lot of the proper information to transfer to the next generation. And on that also, we are launching a new CRP on option to enhance nuclear energy sustainability. And you're going beyond the characterization itself. That will be launched also next year. All this coordinated research program will be announced on the agency website, and all organizations in the world can decide to join us in this joint research effort. Next. Apart from that, we have other collaborative projects which are looking at spent fuel under the INPRO, innovative nuclear for the future, cooperative approach to the back end of the nuclear fuel cycle, looking at the drivers, whether there are institutional, economic, and legal opportunities and impediments, and so on, publication working on that, and also ways from innovative types of reactors and fuel cycles. It's important when we are developing new technologies that we think about the spent fuel management of this new technology. And chromium cladding will not behave and we handle the same way as the current zirconium cladding, for instance. And when we're talking about molten salt reactors, it's a whole new field which need to be discussed and researched. Next one, please. So basically, as a conclusion, ensuring flexibility provides opportunities for any anticipated or innovative future solution. Storage for long period contributes to flexibility, and we have made already a lot of research which give us a good level of confidence on the safety and sustainability of extended period when necessary. As I said again, some countries are recycling just in time and happy with it. And flexibility should not be seen as wait and see. Wait and see is something like I do nothing and I think of nothing. That is not sustainable and that is not a good policy. Now, having a policy that you reassess from time to time and remain flexible in terms of adapting to what the new realities will be is a proactive and a very positive approach. And that's what we're encouraging those countries, especially those countries who are starting nuclear programs now, to have a proactive approach on spent fuel management and to reassess on a regular basis their policy, so that they can adjust to what will be the new technologies and the new social expectations at that time, and in between benefit from the 60 years and more of experience on spent fuel storage, plus all the research done, which gives confidence that it is safe to do so. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christophe, for this presentation and for speeding up a little bit towards the end. We still try to keep in time. And I will just go for our next two speakers. And the next two speakers come from Nuclear Energy Agency at the OECD. We will hear first from Ms. Rebecca Tades, Head of Radioactive Waste Management and Decommissioning Division, and then from Dr. Tatiana Ivanova, Head of Division of Nuclear Science and Education Division, and both from OECD Nuclear Energy Agency. They will talk about their perspective on advanced fuel cycles. In this presentation, both speakers will present an overview of the scientific issues of advanced fuel cycles and the essentials for implementing a sustainable nuclear energy infrastructure. So please, Rebecca and Tatiana, the floor is yours, and please do try to keep a time under 10, hopefully 15 minutes.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to present. So what we're going to try to do, can I have the slides? What we try to do is I will discuss some of the challenges that we face when we're thinking about advanced fuel and fuel management. And then Tatiana will go into discuss some of the activities within the nuclear science. And I'll discuss a little bit what we're doing in the Committee of Radioactive Waste Management. Next slide, please. Okay, just to give you an overview of our organization, NEA has 34 countries seeking excellence in nuclear safety, technology, and policy. And we have 8 technical standing committees, and the committees that we will really focus on discussion would be on the Radioactive Waste Management Committee and the Nuclear Science Committee. There are some activities that I will mention that includes decommissioning. As we're thinking about advanced new design and new reactors and things like that, decommissioning also has to play a part. So there's some activities that I will discuss a little bit. But our goal is really to look at through these working parties and expert groups how to address some of the challenges that we face in order to have a sustainable nuclear energy. Next slide, please. So as Christophe has explained what has been going on in the current light water reactor, what I will try to do is focus more, what are the challenges that we see from the back end that is, as new fuel come into play, what are the things that we need to consider? And some of the challenges that we see is the packaging, for example, of the transport packaging for whether it is a unique waste streams from non-light water reactors or even fresh fuels. If you're thinking about high enriched uranium, the packaging has to be reevaluated and see what are the challenges that we face. The waste form also is an area that we need to address because the physical and chemical form of the radioactive material that is being proposed in some of the new advanced reactors have not been evaluated to make sure that these wastes could also be disposed in the current design of the radioactive waste disposal facility for spent fuel and high-level waste. We also see some challenges in modeling because some of the radionuclide inventories of the non-light water reactors may not be, the computational codes that we have in place right now might not be able to address some of the radionuclides that might be coming in So that also needs to be looked at from both transportation as well as spent fuel management and accident impact to do the analysis. And criticality is also an area that we need to address from the perspective of that when we're looking at for high enriched uranium as one of the elements that we might use for advanced reactors, then we need to make sure that we have the data that is necessary to do benchmarking about 5%, and that the casks are capable of addressing those issues, transportation, as well as spent fuel storage are capable of addressing criticality concerns. Next slide, please. What are the anticipated regulatory challenges? I think some of the things that we've identified is that enrichment fabrication facilities, most commercial facilities are designed and licensed for 5% enriched material. So there's a challenge that the regulator has to consider how to increase that, and the licensing process needs to be evaluated. Transportation also is an area that we think that needs to be addressed from packaging when you're looking at high enriched, or also when you're considering materials that are exotic, some of the molten salt reactors and other reactors, that fuels that are being considered needs to be evaluated to make sure that we have the transportation packaging still within the bound to address those issues. And then fresh and spent fuel transportation and storage, as I said before, we really need to look at those areas and address some of the issues with criticality, integrity of the fuel, the safety needs to be addressed. Next slide, please. So what is the Radioactive Waste Management Committee is doing is that we created an ad hoc group on extended storage of radioactive waste and spent fuel. And the objective of this ad hoc group is to look at what are the current activities. Are there any gaps that needs to be addressed to deal with the new type of spent fuel that could be generated through high burnup or other management issues in new fuels, aging issues, and then we'll also look at transportation readiness for both the fresh fuel and used fuel in the future when these technologies are improved. We also looked at consideration of existing codes and standards to predict radioactive waste and spent fuel evolution, both for long-term storage as well as identify tools that require for extended storage periods, and then any transportation issues that might be happening in radioactive waste and spent fuel. So this ad hoc group was given a responsibility to look at for 1 year, look at the gap, and then it goes back to the committee to determine what activities that will take place for further for our groups. Next slide, please. We also thought that it's important to make sure that we are considering the role of waste management in decommissioning advanced reactor design and licensing, as well as fuel. So we are planning to have a workshop, NE and NRCan workshop in Ontario, Canada. The dates have not been determined as of yet due to the fact of COVID. But this is really to bring the designer, the operators, the implementers, the waste people together and understand what are the issues that needs to be addressed from the design perspective to address radioactive waste management and decommissioning, such that we take the lessons we've learned from existing sites and activities, and we make sure that we bridge those, learn from them and improve them. Also looking at from the bridge between the new waste features and existing final disposal strategies, are they within the bound? If not, what are the things that we need to consider? And then better understand the development of transport and disposal canisters, review current challenges in decommissioning, and then better, of course, stakeholder plays a significant role. So we need to consider how we put them in through the process such that the decision we make at the end is really applicable to all. Next slide. So how we're addressing these issues is that we need to really look at some of the areas of work that needs to be done from research perspective, and we are collaborating with the Nuclear Science Committee to address some of these challenges, such as criticality, streamlining process for characterization, transportation, We're looking at modeling to make sure that the computational models that are in place are able to do these analysis for new fuel and as well as spent fuel. And then using robotic systems to address how do you measure some of the activities. For example, for current systems, should we have sensors in the to monitor casks, and then we're using other robotic systems. So all these are activities that we are looking into, and some of the activities is being addressed by nuclear science. With that, I would give it to Tatiana to go through her presentation.
Thank you, Rebecca. And I would like to thank the organizers of this seminar for the opportunity to present the nuclear science activities related to our spent fuel and fuel cycle, advanced fuel cycle. Next slide, please. Next slide. Nuclear science takes an integrated and systematic approach to the fuel cycle issues and spent fuel management, focusing on both practical issues highlighted by Rebecca in the previous presentation and the future challenges. Our numerous activities cover the nuclear fuel cycle issues and relevant technologies from the front end to the back end, as shown in this simplified chart and highlighted in this list. Some of the INEA initiatives that Rebecca has already mentioned, I'll briefly present now, and I would like you to change the slide, please. The fuel cycle scenarios is one of the group and one of the activities under the umbrella of the Nuclear Science Committee. And the recent initiative, a recent task force on demonstration of fuel cycle closure, including partitioning and transmutation for industrial readiness by 2050, was launched in January this year. This initiative brings together high-level experts from several countries who meet regularly to produce high-level reports that will tackle technological, economic, and societal aspects of advanced fuel cycle and partitioning transmutation options. This report will provide a recommendation how these technologies can reach industrial maturity in 2050. And it will also recommend practical steps towards experimental demonstration of the feasibility of the closure of the fuel cycle. Also, I'm very pleased to announce here that the NEA jointly with our members are going to co-organize the International Exchange Meeting on actinide and fission product partitioning transmutation. And the next event, the 16th IMPT, co-organized by Rosatom, will be held in June next year in St. Petersburg. And we thank our Rosatom partners and invite you to attend this meeting and to be part of the discussion on the state-of-the-art development in this area. Next slide, please. Next, another topic that I would like to present is the separation processes relevant for spent fuel, nuclear fuel reprocessing, waste treatment, recycling, and reuse of spent fuel components. The current activities in this area encompass report on treatment of volatile fission products and the new database on extractants for spent fuel reprocessing. You can also see publications that have been produced by the group, by our group in this area. Next slide, please. And of course, nuclear science tackles fundamental aspects related to our radiowaste waste management and storage. And starting from fundamental aspects, we have collection of thermodynamic models and data. We have joint projects and regular nuclear science activities. We have a broad range of topics covered, topics of nuclear data covered by our working parties and expert groups. We work on nuclear criticality safety, and here our area of work includes modeling and simulation, benchmarking, validation, and uncertainty quantification. And one of the major output in this area of nuclear science is the handbook of the International Criticality Safety Benchmark Evaluation Project, or ICSBP project. This is the world's largest collection of internationally peer-reviewed critical benchmarks that are widely used for criticality safety assessment of fuel cycle facilities, including transport and storage. Currently, database contains nearly 5,000 benchmarks of critical, near critical, or subcritical configurations collected since 1995. There are several configurations with over 5% enrichment required for, and mentioned by Rebecca and required by our practitioners. Another collection of integral experiments used for radiation protection is SINBAD database. It contains compilations of over 100 shielding benchmark experiments. It is compiling high quality experiments for validation and benchmarking of computer cores and nuclear data used for radiation transport and shielding problems. Next slide. Thank you. And another area, very important area, mentioned also by Rebecca, is characterization of the spent nuclear fuel. We have a spent fuel isotopic composition database, so-called SF-COMPO, that contains the world's largest collection of experimental assays of spent nuclear fuels. The measurements in SF-COMPO are isotopic concentrations from destructive radiochemical analysis of spent nuclear fuel samples, supplemented with design information of fuel assembly, fuel roads, as well as with relevant information on operating conditions and characteristics of host reactors. The data in SF-COMPOS comes from 750 SNF samples irradiated in 44 power reactors, which have experimentally measured in the past 50 years. In addition to this, we have recently launched a new benchmark on colorimetric measurements of spent nuclear fuels assemblies, and we are working on this together with a Red Waste Management Committee. I think this was my last slide. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Tatiana, and Rebecca for introducing us the work of NIA on this respect. And this was also a policy review, and now we will turn our heads to another policy review, the policy given by a country that is leaving the nuclear sector. We'll hear from Sylvia Stumpf. Sylvia Stumpf is employed by Karlsruhe Institute of Technology, but she's working on behalf of German Federal Ministry for Economy, and she will speak about German way of nuclear waste management. Of course, with the decision to phase out nuclear power generation, the framework conditions for nuclear research in Germany have changed fundamentally. The presentation will provide an overview of the responsibilities, the research structure, and the importance of international relations in the context of nuclear safety research. So, Sylvia, please try to keep the time within hopefully 10 minutes, and the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Tomas. Thank you for your introduction, and I will start immediately. So, good afternoon, and perhaps we start with the next slide. Yeah, just to give you an impression on how the situation is in Germany about the nuclear energy. And so with the Fukushima accident in 2011, there was an immediate shutdown of 8 reactors in Germany. And with this, in the same year, it was decided by the German Bundestag to have a change of the atomic energy law. So it was decided to successively shut down the remaining 9 reactors until 2022. This is already next year. And of course, research reactors, fuel cycle facilities remain operational. But together with the shutdown, there's also a large decommissioning program in progress. And as you can see from the table, yeah, we have still 6 nuclear power plants in operation, but 26 are already in decommissioning and 3 of them are completely decommissioned, actually. So when we talk about future of spent fuel management today in the context of this webinar, yeah, you will realize that Germany has a very special role or very specific role in that. And yeah, Mr. Xerri, when he was talking about yeah, the nuclear power program, yeah, it's and about parameters that determine the pathways of waste management, then yeah, for Germany, there are two parameters that are very important, and that is public acceptance. That is first of all, and the second one is energy strategy. And since there's no real public acceptance at the moment for nuclear power or for energy by nuclear power, and since we have no actually no energy strategy that includes yeah, nuclear power, we are right now in a phase out situation, and this determines our actions in the field of nuclear waste management. So next slide, please. So what is the situation then in Germany? The situation is like this, that on the basis of working results of the repository, the German Repository Commission, it was decided to have an amendment of the Site Selection Act. So it was defined that one has to define new exclusion criteria, new minimum requirements, weighing criteria. And so this new Site Selection Act came into force 2014. And in connection or in context with this Site Selection Act, there was a restructuring of responsibilities, so of the political responsibility, the implementing responsibility in Germany. And what is even more important, Germany went back to a blank map. So there was a reset and a start from zero when it comes to finding the right site in Germany. So we have a blank geographic map at the moment. Next slide, please. So in order to select the right site, it was decided to have a three-step a selection process. In step one, this is what we are right into now, that is the determination of sub-areas. So the first interim report with proposed areas was already published the end of last year, 2020. And on the basis of this interim report, the Bundestag will decide on the regions to be explored in step 2 and 3. So step 2 would be the surface exploration, step 3, the underground exploration, and the whole explorating process will end in 2031. And with this, Germany is going to start the construction of the repository until 2050. And with this, also the implementation as of 2050. And of course, this will have an influence on our interim storage, since the timetable is much enlarged. Next slide, please. Okay, so today, again, when talking about the future of spent fuel management, then we should ask the question, what are the objectives of nuclear safety research in Germany? In this context. And of course, the superordinate intention is to the protection of people and environment. And it becomes clear that research in the field of nuclear safety is very important, as well as research for the safe storage and disposal of radioactive waste. But what is totally missing in this graph is, so what you will not find is research with regard to advanced fuel cycles. Nevertheless, Germany is aware that it's very important to keep competence in that field of research. And Germany is aware that there's a risk of being left behind when it comes to advanced fuel cycles. So we take this as a very important reason to deepen and focus on international cooperation. So international developments, participating in international cooperation. So this is why you find this as a fourth pillar, a third pillar. And the next thing that is very important for Germany is to keep the state and to develop the state of science and technology. Next slide, please. Okay, in Germany, there are 3 ministries that are involved in the research on nuclear safety, each bearing different responsibilities. The content and focus of innovation, energy politics, and research funding is described in our energy research program, which is led by the BMWI, that is the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Energy. So the BMWI is responsible for defining research areas such as reactor safety, research on interim storage, treatment of waste, repository research, and research on cross-cutting issues. And this is described, as I took in the concept of research funding. Next slide, please. And to give you a short overview, so what is performed in the different research areas. So for the reactor safety, the focus so far has been on research in power reactors in Germany. But since we're in that phase out, consideration of existing and developing plans and plant concept abroad is more and more increasing. And the main objective is to further development and an independent, technically sound and based on own knowledge, security, technical competence. Next slide, please. What is relatively new for the research concept, that is the research on interim storage due to that prolonged time of site selection process. So we have to think about interim storage and waste treatment, and the research in that field intends to create the scientific basis for extended interim storage. And of course, there's an overlap with reactor safety and repository research. Okay, the special interest is in condition of waste and containers, investigation of the effect on transportability and handling, protective effect of buildings, etc. Next slide, please. Repository research, also in the context that we have the new challenge of site selection, is very important to, or it's necessary to have an equivalent open-ended consideration of all host rocks, such as salt and crystalline and clay, since we start from a white map again. And the focus is on the development of instruments and methodology for the safety case, system behavior and development, and the technical feasibility and long-term behavior of repository components. Next slide, please. And the research on cross-cutting issues includes knowledge and competence management, socio-technical issues, and nuclear material monitoring aspects. Next slide, please. Okay, so when we talk about the future of spent fuel management, then of course one perspective to look at it is the perspective of research. And this research approach is divided into 3 main pillars. First of all, the applied fundamental research, so classical experimental work in laboratories and modeling of experimental data. But of course, we are also performing the practical validation and application, so safety assessment and technical demonstration, working underground research labs. And as a third pillar, you have the education and training in order to build and maintain technical and scientific expertise. Next slide, please. Yeah, so beside the perspective of research, one could also argue with to change the perspective, and that is to look at the management idea by developing competence in young academics. So of course it is very important to have qualified staff in order to perform research for reactor safety and interim storage, etc. But moreover, it's very important to have the preservation and expansion of specialists' knowledge. So knowledge management is also something very important. This is something we definitely realize in Germany. And I guess, Mrs. Ivanova was also talking about that and I personally see a great overlap, that knowledge management, training, education, and basic knowledge in physics and chemistry, of course, is something that also Germany is aware of in order to have a future in spent fuel management. But beside that, of course, international networking is another overarching is of overarching importance. So next slide, please.
Silvia, can you conclude, please?
Yeah, this is my final slide. So what we do in Germany is to have bilateral agreements, for example, with NAGRA, Rosatom, SKB. We are participating in international organization, and finally, we are working in big research infrastructures such as underground research labs, material test reactors, test facilities, etc. So, and with this last slide, please. I'm at the end. I thank you for your kind attention, and of course, please ask me your question if you have some.
Yes, thank you, Silvia. I think we have some questions for the panel, especially how to motivate young in your focus on repository alone. But maybe one possibility for future is also look at the closed fuel cycles, and we will hear about closed fuel cycles in our next presentation, which will be given by Professor Pershukov. He's a special representative of Rosatom in International Research and Development Project, and he's also supervisor of ProRIU project. So I would also now welcome Mr. Pershukov.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for the invitation to participate in your very interesting webinar. I try to give you more information about our breakthrough project, and very good announcement about Russia, that Russia in the presentation of Xerri, one of the countries who start the practical implementation of closed nuclear fuel cycle. It's correct. But we consider the closed nuclear fuel cycle not only for fuel management. For our understanding, the closed nuclear fuel cycle is a unique way to securing green nuclear power system. Without decision of problem with spent fuel management, it is impossible to include nuclear energy in the taxonomy and prove that the nuclear energy is the green energy. Okay, next up. Okay, thank you. A few words about the general position, why we are working and what we are doing, why we are doing the closed nuclear cycle, and why our breakthrough project, now the project number 1 in Russian Federation, is Rosatom. First of all, the global primary energy consumption is steadily increasing. It's understandable. At the same time, electricity consumption is growing at a faster pace. Given the trends of digitalization, electric startup, and the replacement of natural gas with energy-intensive hydrogen in production, electricity consumption will only increase. At recent year, despite the rapid development of renewable energy, half of the growth in output the level of 2010 was achieved by increasing the burn of the coal, oil, and gas, unfortunately. This means that the green electric power industry, which includes solar, wind, hydro, and as a dream, nuclear generation, is not yet coping with the scale of the energy challenge. Next. About the CO2 emission and decarbonization. According to the latest data from the World Energy Agency, the electricity and heating sector accounts approximately 40% of carbon dioxide emissions. The task of decarbonizing this sector of the economy is a key of the global agenda for climate regulation and sustainable development. Russia is one of the largest emitters of carbon dioxide, ranking first after the China, United States, and India. In the address of the Federal Assembly in April 21 this year, our president announced that we must respond to the challenges of the climate change and outlining the target point. Next, please. Structure, general structure of power generation. Germany actively developed renewable energy. This led to the increase in the cost of electricity and the depends of production on the weather conditions, but the problem of emission has not yet been solved. France, 70% of nuclear power generated. The price of electricity approximately 2 times cheaper than in Germany. And Russia, now we have 90% of nuclear power generation energy in whole territory of Russia, and approximately 40% if we are talking about the European part of the Russian Federation. And our price just only 5 euro cent per kilowatt hour. These factors can be accounted when preparing the responses of the challenges of the climate change. Next. What does it mean for us, for our understanding, what does it mean green source of electricity? The global demand of the green source of electricity can be briefly described in 3 words: clean, inexpensive, and unlimited. Of course, I am not talking about the safety, because for nuclear power, safety is the basement. We can't discuss any technical solution that can to provide very, very low probability of accidents. Next. Of course, we discussed it a lot about what the general characteristics of nuclear power and how we see in the global maps of the power generation. Of course, at minimum CO2 emissions, you see that nuclear is the 5th place in the all type of power generation of the technology. Second, at smallest territory, it depends on the production from weather conditions. There, the comparison of nuclear energy with wind and solar. And also we start make the comparison with low specific consumption of materials. And also we see the NPP, due to the very, very high potential of the energy in a small volume, also has a very good characteristics of material consumption during the construction. Next, please. But nuclear power achieves full compliance with the requirements for a clean and inexpensive and unlimited source of electricity only when moving to a closed nuclear fuel cycle, which solve the issues of sufficiency of resources, zero, maybe near zero waste, and absolute environmental safety. This 3 position is a basic principle when we consider the breakthrough project, and we try to input these basic principles in the realization of our project. Next please. Of course, in raw material, you know that open cycle is 0.7% of uranium resources can be involved in power generation. If closed cycle, it will be 86%. The closed field cycles introduction of such technology increases the efficiency of the use of natural uranium by 150 times, where the share of world resources and energy resources increasing by 86%. Next slide. Second, the biggest problem of open fuel cycle and waste management and the nuclear power generation in whole is the radiological equivalence, is a problem of radiological equivalence and radiation equivalence. If we are working in open nuclear fuel cycle, it will be near 700,000 people. Yes, if we are working for closed nuclear fuel cycle, it's just 100 people. Next, please. And can we decide the problem of nuclear power and spent fuel if we are working in open nuclear fuel cycle? Unfortunately not. During the period from 2015 to 2040, we were twice increasing spent nuclear fuel cell accumulation. It means that without decision during the without the decision of reduction of storage of spent nuclear fuel, it's impossible to input the nuclear power plant in green energy. Next, please. What's the way? What we need to do? Where we are? Of course, a lot of discussion, and not now, at maybe 50 years ago, about the closed nuclear fuel cycle, and clear understanding that is a way not only for green energy, but also for human health, for social problem. But when we create the breakthrough project, the general idea is a closed nuclear cycle combined with the fast reactor, because without the fast reactor, it's impossible to close fuel cycle. And included, this project included the use the fast reactor of the reproduction of the fuel base, ecological safety. This picture we see in each presentation. It's very good. Waste-free, of course, it's waste-free in general. Of course, we have some problem with natural radioactivity that we input in the fuel cycle from the land during the production of uranium. And sufficient resources for the large-scale development. It's the basic principle that we input to the breakthrough project, and now we realized it. Please, next. This project will start approximately to 2011, 2012. From 2015, we start the construction first plan or first model of this pilot demonstration energy complex. Now we constructed in Tomsk region, and it's the fabrication. Of course, we need to develop the new fuel, not just MOX. And now we complete the development new nitrate fuel, uran plutonium fuel for closing cycle. It's density fuel. In 2022-2023, we complete the construction. Now the construction will be completed, and we now they installate some technological equipment. Part of them you can see one of them you can see on the photo. And in 2024 we will start the manufacturing assemblies for primary loading in the breast reactors. The second model is the fast reactor, the reactor breast 300. We complete the design in 2020. After that, we receive the permission from our regulator. And in June 2021, we start the construction. First is the wall breast 300 reactor with lead coolant. It's a picture of start the construction, first concrete. And third, final decision for closing, final model for closing of the nuclear fuel cycle is the representation model. Now we complete the R&D and choose the technological scheme of this. It will be combined hydrometallurgical and Pira process. And we start the construction 2024, I hope, and need to complete before 2029. And after that, the first irradiated pellets will be loaded to the representation model, and we close the fuel cycle. The 2030, we complete the construction pilot demonstration energy complex. It will be, and after that, we will have the proven technology for future commercial using. Next slide. Why? Where we will do it? Of course, we are going to understand that now from simple process of change the old generation, old light water reactors. After the decommission, we need to construct some news, and we choose that we will consider the use fast reactors for replacement some power plant where the reactors still like VVR or RBMK must be decommissioned. In 2045, we hope to construct a few commercial scale power units, and we will use a new technological platform. It's mean fast reactor or some special design like a VVR-C for light water reactors with possibility to use the MOX fuel for produce the electricity. By 2045, it's possible to ensure the large-scale introduction of the fast neutron reactor with the closed nuclear fuel cycle, and the formation of two-component nuclear power system in Russia will be completed. Next. Next, a few words. We are sure that closed nuclear fuel cycle is non-alternative way for input the nuclear power sector, the generation in the green energy. And also it will be a new technological platform, and this contribution of economic growth and improving the well-being in Russian cities. And so a few words, breakthrough from the theoretical project, from the R&D project, now they come through, it's really industrial scale project for demonstration, technology and technology and science and under construction and operation, use the closed nuclear fuel cycle with fast reactor for future. And so I hope before the 2030, we will be demonstrate and can demonstrate the closed nuclear fuel cycle, weight of green energy, and status for nuclear power. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Pershukov, for this overview presentation of the breakthrough or ProRev project. Now we look another project presentation from another country. We will look at China, where we will hear words from Dr. Liu Qiuchan. Liu Qiuchan is Director of Division of Nuclear and Radiation at China Nuclear National Company. And he will talk about, he will discuss China's nuclear power development and the significance of backend on that development. This will be in the context of China's carbon peak and carbon neutrality goal. So, hello, Liu. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Thomas. Hello, everyone. It's my great honor to participate in this webinar. The speeches made by the experts are very inspiring to me. Many experts have been working in the field of nuclear power and nuclear fuel cycle for many years, and they shared with us about their personal experience and thinking from so many years of work. Today, I would like to share with you through my speech about why I believe the back-end field that I'm working in is hopeful and worthwhile struggling through life, especially in China. In just a few decades, China has developed from a poor and backward agricultural country to industrialize the country with a complete industrial system. While realizing fruitful development achievements, it has also attached great importance to the balance of economic development and environmental protection. Chinese President Xi Jinping pointed out, Chinese civilization has always advocated the unity of nature and man and pursued the harmonious coexistence of man and nature. China takes the idea of ecological civilization as a guide, implements the new development concept, and adheres the ecological priority, green and low carbon development path. China will strive to achieve carbon peak between 2030 and achieve carbon neutrality by 2060. In order to achieve the goal of carbon neutrality, the non-fossil energy must account for more than 80% of energy structure in China by 2060. But currently, the percentage is about 15% only. In addition, although there are 51 nuclear power plants in operation in mainland China, and the installed capacity ranks third in the world, the cumulative annual power generation of China's nuclear power plants account for only about 5% of the country's cumulative annual power generation, which is still far behind France and the United States. The government work report proposed to actively and orderly develop nuclear power under the premise of ensuring safety. In addition, the national planning proposed that promote the energy revolution, build a clean, low carbon, safe, and efficient energy system, safely and securely promote nuclear power construction. It is foreseeable that there will be a significant development opportunity for nuclear power, a safe, clean, and efficient large-scale baseload energy in China. And nuclear power will play an active role in achieving the goal of carbon neutrality. Safety is a lifeline for the development of nuclear power and even the entire nuclear industry, China has always regarded safety as a prerequisite for the development of nuclear power. In order to take lessons from the Fukushima nuclear accident and further improve the safety level of nuclear facilities, Chinese governments have formulated and implemented short, medium, and long-term safety improvement plans for nuclear facilities, aiming to strengthen the capability of nuclear facilities to withstand external incidents, prevent and mitigate serious accidents. The nuclear fuel cycle is an essential foundation for the nuclear power development. In the field of nuclear power, China has had decades of fruitful cooperation with other advanced countries in nuclear power technology in the world, which provided positive assistance to China's nuclear power scale development and achieved huge economy benefit, good social benefit, and significant ecological benefit in China. But the sustainable development of nuclear power are extremely restricted by two major aspects. The first is the nuclear fuel supply at the front end. Uranium resources are the food of nuclear power plant. Under the traditional thermal reactor scenario, the utilization rate of uranium resource is only 1%. The global uranium resource is limited, which to a certain extent restricted the long-term sustainable development of nuclear power. For China, where nuclear power is developing rapidly and uranium resources are relatively scarce, the situation is even more urgent. The second is the use nuclear fuel handle at the back end. As nuclear fuel contains a large number of long-lived radionuclides, if it's not properly handled, it will become a burden for the safe and economy operation of nuclear power plants in short term, and will also threaten the ecological environment and the human health in the long term. For China, where nuclear power is developing rapidly, the dual challenges of safe operation of nuclear power and environmental protection are also more severe. There is a Chinese saying, prevent trouble before it happens. China has formulated the 3 steps development of nuclear energy. The thermal neutron reactor as the first step, fast breeder reactor as the second one, controlled nuclear fusion reactor, the third one, and determined the technology route of nuclear fuel closed cycle to make full use of uranium resources to achieve nuclear waste minimization and to ensure the sustainable development of nuclear energy. China resolutely implements such a technical route and always upholds the spirit of openness, tolerance, and win-win cooperation, promote and carry out international cooperation activity, and has made some achievements in the related field. In the field of fast reactor, the Chinese experimental fast reactor has achieved full power and stable operation. And the demonstration fast reactor project is also in the process of intensive construction. China is moving steadily towards the second step of the 3 steps. In the field of nuclear backend, the pilot plant has achieved hot commissioning, and construction of disposal site for medium and low-level radioactive waste of nuclear power stations and spent fuel reprocessing plant has been included in the national planning. The development of nuclear back-end industry, on the one hand, will properly handle the user flow from nuclear power plant to ensure the safe operation of thermal neutron reactors. On the other hand, recover nuclear materials that can be recycled and use it in fast reactors or thermal reactors, thereby increasing the utilized rate of uranium resources. It can be regarded as a key link to realize the transition from the first step to the second step, and will surely embrace a new and brighter development prospects and the demands of sustainable development of nuclear power, and under the traction of carbon peak and the carbon neutrality goal in China. China advocates to jointly build a community with shared future for mankind and a community of life for man and nature. Human society's development needs and the resource constraints are the same. After hundreds of years of industrial development, human society has entered a new stage of development, and adhering to the new development concept of innovation, coordination, greenness, openness, and sharing. It is a common long cherished wish to realize the common high quality development of all mankind on the premise of humanist coexistence with ecological environment. If it can say that the Fukushima nuclear accident 10 years ago brought several challenges to the development of the world's nuclear power and the new nuclear industry, then in the new historical period, the world's nuclear power and even the nuclear industry will usher in brand new opportunities. Looking at the development process of human science and looking forward to prospects of future technological progress, we have reason to believe that nuclear back-end is an important technological and material support for this promising clean energy. Will continue to be the current and future technological innovation direction in the world nuclear field, together with fast reactor and its working for life. Then let us join hands, use our knowledge and technology to promote the development of nuclear back-end, boost the sustainable development of nuclear power, and jointly create a better future for all mankind and the entire planet. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Leo, for your contribution to this discussion. And since we are running short on time, I will now go directly to Finland, to Mr. Jari Makonen. Mr. Jari Makonen, Head of Sales and Marketing at Posiva, will present Posiva's trailblazing mission to plan and construct a deep geological repository, and the deep geological repository will soon reach initial target. This is industrial operation. Mr. Jari, are you with us?
Here I am.
Okay.
For sure I am.
Please. Slides.
So, showtime. Slides, please. Good morning, good day, and good afternoon for all participants. It's a great pleasure of mine to give you an overview and status how Posiva's own deep geological program is now currently doing and proceeding. First of all, a couple of words of Posiva as a company. It's truly a company and even a privately owned company by two Finnish nuclear operators, Teollisuuden Voima and Fortum, which both of them are public listed companies. And The overall mission of POSIVA is to create a safe and cost-efficient final disposal solution for its owners, and that's why POSIVA exists. So as an employer, POSIVA employs currently 90 people, and in addition to that, even up to some 100 external person years we do purchase outside. And right now, as we are constructing our own encapsulation plant on an above ground area, we are employing even up to 150 construction workers. So this is a very significant from the employment perspective, how POSIVA as a company creates jobs for its municipality. POSIVA Solutions instead is a subsidiary of POSIVA, and it has been established right 5 years ago. We just had our 5 years anniversary last June. And the role of POSIVA Solutions is to sell the expertise that is accumulated in POSIVA over the recent decades for all nations in the entire globe that are using nuclear energy as a source of electricity. And I'm actually located in this POSIVA Solutions company. Next, please. So this picture includes quite a lot of information, but I want to underline only a couple of main things which are embedded to this picture. First of all, as the reading direction is from left to right, in the blue bar of this tube, if we may call that like that, we initiated our own site selection program early 1980s and completed that roughly in 2000, 20 years by 2000. And meanwhile, naturally, we followed the pattern of applying different licenses during the site selection phase. And then on 2015, we started to construct the encapsulation plant. And that is, of course, a very important milestone in the overall journey of POSIVA's. And right now, in other words, by the end of this year, there is another very important milestone in the overall journey of POSIVA's, and that is the application of operating license that we are going to submit by the Finnish government by the end of this year. So that is very, very important milestone. And at the same time, as we are constructing our encapsulation plant, which actually should be ready by next year, when it comes to the above ground facility, that proceeds and takes us further to 2023, when we are going to test the entire disposal process, and I'm going to open that a little bit more after a couple of minutes. And our current aim is to start the industrialized operation by 2025 as the first waste management organization in the entire world. And that is, of course, not only an important topic for POSIVA or Finland, but the entire globe and the entire community of nuclear energy. So that is the thing that we all have been waiting, and now I'm fully confident that POSIVA's next years are followed with a very great interest all around the globe. So once we have initiated and commissioned our facility to operation by 2025, then the next 100 years will be industrialized final disposal, leading us to the next century, when after roughly 100 years, all the already existing rad waste is high level rad waste, but also the radioactive waste still to come from the operating plants will be disposed. And then somewhere in 2120 to 2140, we are then going to close the operational facility and decommission everything and get back everything to the natural stage. But this picture also tells us something more, to my mind, and that also very important thing, and it's the viewpoint of personnel, because in a relatively short period of time, it has been quite challenging to manage initially the R&D phase, now the construction phase, and then only in a few years' time approach to and then initiate the operational phase. So from the personnel management point, that is also challenging, but POSIVA has been proceeding very, very well in that area of overall deep geological repository program management as well. And we have been able to transform our personnel during this journey from this perspective as well. And that is, of course, a very, very motivating thing to advance this program as well. Next, please. So in this picture, you can see actually the encapsulation plant on the above ground area. And like I mentioned just a second ago, we are aiming to get that building and plant to be ready by next summer even. So that's very, very interesting. And now already, as we have been discussing in this webinar already a few times, is this fuel cycle. And now finally, there will be a solution for this fuel cycle made by Posiva, and that's of course that we are very proud of. But also, it's not only to complete a gigantic project in the Finnish from the Finnish perspective, but also for the entire world to communicate that what we have been doing and how we have been doing this, what are our lessons learned, and what are the benefits that we can share for all the other nations who are using nuclear energy. So during our years when we have been planning and constructing the facility, the important stakeholders have naturally been, of course, the government, which still changes every now and then, but still in the Finnish case, we have been very successful to keep this program alive all the time, even though the governments have been changing several times during the, say, like past 40 years. But still, there has been the commitment, regardless of every government in force, that we will continue with this program. It's so promising, and that's a very important thing. Naturally, Posiva has been in strong interaction on a continuous basis together with our National Safety Authority, and that has been very fruitful cooperation. There is a strong respect to each counterpart, and we have been developing the process further and have been successful in agreeing things that how to proceed from here to there, etc., etc. So that's one thing. But probably, as always, and in every nation, the most important thing is to get and have the local acceptance, which was also mentioned in Sylvia's presentation, that there is for the time being no public acceptance in Germany. In Finland, the situation is totally vice versa, starting from the nuclear energy per se. The level of acceptance among our citizens to nuclear energy as a whole is very positive, as we do measure that on a yearly basis, that how do citizens understand nuclear energy, what is their attitude on nuclear energy. It's been very positive over the several recent years, and it's actually growing to be more positive. But that covers also the final disposal, and especially in the Eurajoki area, where our Olkiluoto nuclear power plant is located, and also our Posiva's facilities are located. So especially in that municipality, the acceptance on this management of the entire fuel cycle is very positive. And to my mind, and as we have been naturally discussing that quite a lot also inside Posiva and Teollisuuden Group, is that we have been communicating the municipality and citizens during the past 4 decades on a regular basis. It has been very fact-based communication. It has been honest. It has been reliable. It has been a true dialogue. And according to the surveys and the feedback that we have been gotten over the years, is that the citizens respect that very much, that we don't try to hide anything, but we are open. We are basing our communication on true facts which are found on the science society. So that's very important to be remembered in every nation who is considering to advance the DGR programs and final disposal programs, that be engaged to your municipality all the time and strongly. Next, please. So with this picture, just to shortly illustrate you Finnish deep geological repository, which is also very well known as a Onkalo. Initially, it was an area where we naturally did a number of different type of tests. Once we got to the disposal level over minus 400 meters. And now we have been continuing to construct the below ground area on further. And right now we are actually finalizing the maintenance area there in Onkalo. And just last May, we started to excavate the concrete final disposal tunnels, 5 of them, which will be used in the final disposal phase. And things are, based on this, proceeding very nicely in the underground area. And you can also see on the left hand side of this picture other things which are under construction for the time being, and what is the size of the repository area for the time being. In the latter part of this presentation, I'm going to show you how it will look like after 100 years. But this is how things look like now. Leading us to the next page, where I am now going to discuss more about this trial run of final disposal that will take place only after 2 years. And what does this trial run of final disposal mean in practice? In this test, we are going to test the entire disposal process from the interim storage through transporting a canister from interim storage to the encapsulation plant, then to manage the fuel rods, which, by the way, actually in this test phase by 23 are yet going to be these so-called dummy fuel rods, not a true concrete rod waste. But we are going to still manage those rods in the encapsulation plant as they would be true ones, and capsulate them to the copper canister, then lift the copper canister down to the repository area and take that manage those there with our special vehicle, which will then transport the copper canister to the disposal tunnel and to the final disposal shaft. And then as the entire tunnel is filled, we will then fill the entire tunnel and close that with a plug. So that is what the trial run of final disposal system test is all about. So without having a true concrete waste, we are going to test the entire process, how that will function. And at the same time, it's important to be recognized and mentioned that we are going to use the processes which will be there in operational phase, machinery which will be there in operational phase, but also the personnel who is considered to operate the entire process after 2025. So from that perspective, it's a true concrete test with the existing personnel, machinery, and processes, and to really prove that everything works and interacts as planned in a R&D phase. We don't need to do this because of National Safety Authority requirement, but initially Posiva wants to carry out this test just to prove ourselves that everything works as planned. And as a final word from this pager, we are now also an opportunity for all waste management organizations in entire world to participate this test after 2 years or in 2 years, and in a very close range to have a unique opportunity to look and see and learn that how things are functioning here in Finland, have a great opportunity to be in interaction with our subject matter experts and discuss that how things are planned to be operated, and by doing so to learn and take those learnings to own home country as well to benefit your own programs. Next page, please. So as I mentioned earlier, this is how our facility and the repository area will look like according to our current plan in 100 years. So meaning in practice that all the rad waste, high-level rad waste will be or has been disposed from our current 4 nuclear power plants, and in addition to those 4, the 5th one, Olkiluoto 3, which will be commenced to the network early next year. So after 100 years, all the rad waste has been disposed to our facility. Next page, please. As a final word, we were very honored to host one very unique, I believe that many of us know him, the Director General of IAEA, Mr. Grossi, who visited our Onkalo premises last November. And just consider now how excited he was. He was almost like a kid in a toy store when he was there underground. And as we know that he's quite active in social media, he was continuously tweeting, because we do have also a Wi-Fi down there. So he was on a continuously basis tweeting that how beautiful this is, how magnificent this is, but also saying directly that Posiva's Onkalo is a true game changer. That in Onkalo, everything that has been planned over the recent decades globally are now going to materialize to be true concrete final disposal facility, which has been planned, which has been constructed according to all the safety standards which are agreed globally by the Science Society, and they have been monitored and including all the safety cases, etc., because that was also a visit of regular basis safety case monitoring. And he was so excited to be there, and that was of course very motivating visit for Posiva people, but also very good communication again for the entire nuclear community, that things are now going towards better direction, and there truly will be a solution to close this entire fuel cycle of nuclear, which has been discussed globally for decades. Next page, please. Thank you for your attention, and now open for a panel discussion.
Thank you, Xerri, for your conclusion, your presentations. And now we have went a little bit over time, so we will have a short maybe panel discussion. I hope all speakers are still with us, and I can see faces still awaken and here. We have heard a lot from storage, recycling. We have heard a lot about disposal, about communication, education. We also know about other interactions in between different stages. So we all know here in the area that backend is not just one simple solution. There are many solutions leading from something, another thing, and the end for the disposal. We haven't mentioned transportation, but transportation is going on in between phases and is quite well developed industry. So from those points, I have one question, maybe general question. How about interactions? Who should manage the interactions between those phases? Is it operators, policy, national policy, company policy? I don't know. Who's willing to answer this question? How about how is important to have a coherent national policy to work on all of those issues of backend management?
Yeah, I think I can answer on the national radioactive waste management policy. I mean, it's a national responsibility to manage waste, and countries have also signed the joint convention on the safety of spent fuel when it is declared as a waste and waste management. And so in this respect, there is a national responsibility to have a national policy. Now, that the national policy doesn't mean that implementation should be done by the state. It can be done by private actors, as we see very successfully in Finland. It can also be done by national actors or actors close to the government or to the administration, that we see, for instance, in France with ANDRA. It can include international cooperation. I mean, spent fuel have been transported since the 80s from many countries, including Japan and Germany, to France and UK, to being reprocessed and then recycled. And the final waste is going back to those countries. And so a component of international cooperation can be part of this national policy, and the same thing for final disposal of high-level waste. And it is not forbidden, but because it's long endeavors, we don't advise any national policy to rely only on a joint common repository. So for all those reasons, it is important that a country establish national road waste management policies. It is important that it is reassessed on a timely basis to follow up both social expectation, as Germany showed, and also technical evolutions. And we do expect to see a comeback of recycling, as explained by some of you, and especially Professor Pashukov and our Chinese colleague, and to assess for that. And that is a national responsibility.
Thank you, Christophe. I see here one question which is directly relating to the implementation of national policy, and it's a very specific question targeted to Xerri. Maybe can you comment about this, Xerri? Was it simpler to implement such a policy because you're a private company or federal government program? It's a little bit, it's not a maybe tricky question.
Well, that's actually a very, very good question, which we face every now and then. And it was, again, nice to face that question again. We have been considering the same, and the answer may be that yes, that as Posiva is owned by private companies, maybe that has been one thing, probably even quite important thing, to take the overall program further in schedule, because there is a need that we have been given by the authority the target to deploy a solution to dispose high-level radioactive waste from these 2 nuclear power plants. So most likely the answer is yes, that has taken us quite nicely further, because it's a kind of commercial initiative that we need to create a solution. That's our target, that's our mission, which I stated and shared you in my first page for Posiva, and then Posiva has been proceeding accordingly.
Yeah, thank you, Xerri. This is also reflected in the composition of this panel. I mean, we have here government representatives, we have private companies here, and I see also this through the history of IFNEC and the endeavor in this field, that although it started all as totally government regulated part, the backend is also developing in let's say commercial side or market side. So backend is opening to markets, and markets are entering into the backend. I see this is a good thing, but of course it needs a little bit more coordination. If you allow me, because we are really reaching towards 2-hour time, which is a long time for our workshop here, we have some other questions directed directly to some particular presenters. We will answer those questions in written format, and we will also publish all presentations on the webpage of IFNEC together with recording. With this, maybe if we have some more concluding remarks, otherwise I would like to thank all the panelists once again for all your wonderful contributions. And of course, I hope we see each other soon, also in person, and work on this interesting subject of developing backend into more commercial way, together with national policies in coherent way towards the situation where the backend will contribute to the green nuclear energy development. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.